All right, thank you so much for those answers.
There too. The more you see the female leaders out there, and the more that you can, the easier it is to find female mentorship and female leadership, the stronger that contingent of us, are going to grow in construction and in design.
Yeah, I mean, when I was, oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, when I was just going to say, when I was a student at Cal Poly Pomona, I had two female professors in design studios throughout my education there, and that is completely different now. I would say that, the number of female professors that you get in studio is much higher. So I think that's like one very relevant change I can see automatically.
I would say that it also falls upon women to empower other women. So if you are on a leadership position, you need to empower and include the people who are on the margins. And that's how you can then uplift the entire society. So I think it dwells on women themselves too.
Great. Those are great answers. I completely agree with what you guys are saying, that women empowerment is I love it in the architecture field. It makes me feel like more comfortable. And on to our next question. How do you balance the demands of a career in architecture with other aspects of your life, particularly considering the societal expectations related to gender roles?
I would say having a partner that's willing to help and normalize things is pretty key for me. I've got one kiddo, and that's enough for me. But I know folks who have a whole suburban full, and I'm not sure how they do it. But for me, I'm lucky enough to have a partner that's happy to take on some of the typical gender, what you would consider a typical gender role mom responsibility. So we're very fair about splitting time and, who being flexible enough to shift to both our schedules. He's an architect as well. So, we both understand deadlines. We both understand exactly what's being asked of us at different times. And, depending on your project timeline and the demands of the client. So having just that understanding across your family of what needs to happen, and then just being willing to share responsibilities. It's hard though. It makes it so that sometimes your day ends a little bit early, but that means you're hopping back on at night to find that balance. But having a kid actually gives you the best balance in the world, because you really want to spend your time at home with your child and with your family and creating those bonds. You want to be there for the sports game. So actually, in a way, it makes you a little bit more efficient, because you have to get everything else done in order to do it.
Well, Stephanie, I'll give you the opposite perspective, because I'd have neither at home. So it is a tough challenge in a way to kind of balance and not get sucked into the long hours, because we live in a world where we want to do our best. We're all architects and designers, because we have a passion for building those environments and we want to do the best. So you spend endless hours in trying to find that right detail and all of those things, and it's so easy to get wrapped into it. And I'm sure as students, you guys go through those long nights of studios, and which is a culture we are trying to break within our own team, to say, no, this is the allocated hours, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to find a happy balance. So it does take a lot of dedication to say, I'm going to stop, I'm going to go to my yoga class, not miss my yoga class, and all of this. And it comes with time. I will be honest, there are times, I still tend to, oh, it's okay, I'll miss a class, it's very easy to go down that path, and you have to snap yourself back. So it is your own personal challenge in a way to maintain that. So I think 7 years ago, when I moved from San Luis Obispo to LA, there was one commitment I made to myself that I will work the hours I need to work during the week, but weekends are mine to keep. That I'm not opening my laptop on weekends. And that has given me the balance I personally need in terms of feeling satisfied to do the work I want to do and not feel that I compromised my work, but keeping that me time for myself. And I'm proud to say in 7 years, there's only a few weekends where it was absolutely impossible to avoid, not avoid working, but it was more, those days are less in a year versus back when, 7 years ago, it was always that rotation was continuous versus where's the weekend and where's the weekday. So it does certainly take self-discipline for sure to kind of meet your goals and maintain your personal and mental well-being in a way as well. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was
Audrey,
gonna just
no.
say that boundaries are super important and discipline is really important. I think if you're going to try to achieve some sort of balance. I'm a mom. I'm a 40-year-old with a 2-year-old, and I feel like I only have so many hours in a day and I only have so much energy. So like after, working all day and then spending time with my child at night, I know I won't regularly have that energy to go back and do meaningful work. And so what does that look like, when you're used to in a previous life working a lot of hours and juggling a lot of things, and not just juggling work, but juggling being part of these organizations that are so meaningful. And so it's really trying to evaluate every season in life and saying, okay, for these years, maybe I can't do the AWA plus D stuff. Maybe I can't grow my business, or maybe I'm going to stick to easy projects and, let myself grow in other ways during these few years. And then maybe a year comes along where you feel more confident in what you're balancing in your personal life, and then you reach in other ways. So I think that that's really important to consider, especially because I did have a child with having my own business. And so I had to plan, how do I do maternity leave when I'm the person in charge? So I think that there's a lot of, for me anyway, everybody's different, but for me, this is what my life has looked like, and it's had to be a lot of planning.
Well, I have the same things that I shared with all the presenters. I have 2 boys. One is off to college. Other one is almost done with middle school. So I did take a break when they were little, but I would say that looking at my life now, I think women need to draw boundaries for sure, and they have to find a partner who is going to be an equal partner in sharing responsibilities. This century is not about women just taking care of kids or doing the domestic work. It's about sharing. And as a woman, you have to make a decision whether you want to be part of bringing in income for the family, or you want your husband to bring in. If you are also wanting to do that, then you have to really be there throughout your life, not take a break and step away and then come back. It doesn't work like that. So as a person, you need to decide, do I want my financial independence, or I want to depend on my husband? If you want it, then you have to work for it. You have to set boundaries. You have to find a partner who is equally going to share the responsibilities, and you can do it. Sorry, it was a long one.
No, thank you very much for all of your insightful perspectives. Our next question, or last question for the group, is how do you prioritize creating inclusive and equitable spaces in your architectural projects or design projects?
I guess I'll go first. I think we all come from very different backgrounds, and being aware of that and being recognizing, respecting people's perspectives, and being inclusive in terms of our belief and our core team value is a good idea can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you are the intern on the staff team, you may be a senior staff, and I work a lot in a public architecture work, which is a lot of design build work. So I get to work with a lot of contractors, and I work with large teams at times. And our philosophy, as with every team I've worked with, is it doesn't matter. You might be a mechanical engineer, or you might be a mechanical subcontractor, that you may have a different idea on how to solve a problem, which kind of creates more innovative and creative solutions at times. You're working with tight budgets, schedules, all of these things. And creativity isn't just limited to beautiful art and good looking buildings. There is creativity in how you solve challenges on a project. I've yet to come across a project that I would say has gone as planned, as in terms of schedule, budget. Things get installed differently than you planned. You have to be agile and flexible, and all of these things can only happen if you keep an open mind and are inclusive to listen to the good ideas that come from any corner of the room. And allowing that platform is just having that self-awareness, and being mindful is the key to it. If you close yourself and say, I've often discussed this with my colleagues, like, yes, there is a architect quality that sometimes comes with certain projects, but architecture has evolved in a way, in the last few years, where buildings have got so complex that you cannot be, it's teamwork. That's what buildings are today. With the technology that you get integrated into buildings, and all of these layers of security, and all the complexities that come with the project now, that it cannot be one person's job. A successful building, a successful team architecture comes with a success of a team. So, and that means, allowing all these different perspectives to come into play. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I felt it was important to kind of talk about all those different aspects of inclusivity in a way.
I agree with Janvi about collaborating with the team. That's very important. I do that on a regular basis. But to answer your question about how do you include, you said gender related. What was your question? I'm so sorry. Let me read it.
Oh, it's okay. We can repeat it. How do you prioritize creating inclusive and equitable spaces in your architectural projects?
So I would say that you have to speak up if you want something done. If you don't speak up, then you're never going to put your ideas across. So don't be shy. Don't resist. Just speak up. I would say one thing that I noticed the other day at an event where it was a business event, and we all had to valet park. So I gave my parking keys and I went and I came back. But because women are dressed in a certain manner, or that's what the society expects, your feet get tired with high heels if you're wearing high heels. And I found that at the valet place, all the guys were wearing flat shoes and they were fine. But the women were all wearing heels, and there was nothing for women to sit. So I think it starts at that point. Have you thought about that? You have to think about, because whatever we see in terms of whatever buildings, whatever is there, it's all designed by men, because it was men who were supporting the women and the family. So they designed these things keeping themselves in mind. So if you find something that's not working, you just speak up and bring a change. That's how you'll include it. Sorry.
I work primarily on public facilities, actually, recreation centers, community centers, aquatic centers, and those have to be built to be thoughtful and be inclusive and accessible for everyone, right? Regardless of gender, ability, vertical, whether we're vertically challenged or not with heels, it all has to work, right? So one of the things we do, I actually, just like Janvi was saying, I let my team help design these facilities, because there are always different perspectives to them. But to some of the areas that, you know, we think of as the least sexy are probably the most important. So if you think of the locker rooms, right? The bathrooms, into the locker rooms, to the changing areas, right? Understanding not just, you know, for guys on the team, understanding how the women use the facilities and vice versa. Like, I don't know if a guy is uncomfortable in front of a urinal and where the urinal's placed, and like, you know, are they worried about someone looking over their shoulder? Do they need to splash them? I don't know these things, but I rely on, you know, the rest of my team to help answer those questions. But on top of that, it's going above and beyond. So beyond that, creating all gender facilities, right, for in any of these community centers, because there are folks that we can phrase them as all gender, we can phrase it as family facilities, whatever. But having the ability to go to a space that is safe and folks don't feel judged by whatever gender they're choosing, is very important. And then creating the security behind that is really important. So as my team's looking and learning how to put these together, those are things that we are always stressing in terms of either line of sight or what things we're putting into those restrooms or locker rooms, who uses them. One big thing recently has been on larger community facilities, not just a kids changing table, but an adult changing table. So for those who are disabled and need the extra help and need space for a caretaker to come in with them, so that they can use the facility as well. So looking across that entire spectrum, and it starts with us, right? Thinking outside the box and thinking, pushing the boundaries, and then, you know, pushing our team, our staff, you know, the younger generation to think beyond that, but also listening to what they've got to say. They may not have our years of experience, but at the same time, they've got experiences all of their own that can contribute to the conversation. So staying open-minded, absolutely.
I mean, to add to that, Stephanie, like, this listening to you kind of reminded me of a design concept we recently, few months back, going through it, and we were designing a building on a campus, and things that I wouldn't have thought about, you know, in terms of where my younger staff comes and says, oh, we should create an Instagrammable moment, like, you know, we need to think about, you know, I'm like, that's like, yes, I was thinking of the architecture of the building, on, you know, how that this is like the focal point and all of those things. And it was kind of, you know, kind of evolved that design slightly different in terms of creating that iconic moment. Yes, we wanted to create this iconic moment on that building. That was always the vision, but it changed the way we painted the building, the colors, and, you know, kind of thinking of the art and the sculpture that went onto that building. After that discussion of saying, you know, you want to create these space. I work on a lot of college campuses and schools, so creating those moments for students to collaborate, and again, looking at different learning styles and looking at different pedagogies, saying sometimes you want to study alone, and maybe it's just being out in the outdoor and creating those landscape moments where you can sit under a tree, because we live in California and we are lucky to have good weather most of the time, unlike days like today. But so it is important that design extends more than just building a building, and it's creating spaces and experiences. Really, it's thinking those, how are you, even I laugh to our younger staff, because we always laugh when you come to, you know, the first project you're probably going to get is a bathroom there. And I'm like, think about it, your best experience going to this restroom, that what are the things that when you go and you are missing, oh, I wish I had a hook for the bag, or all those things. And funnily, this morning, I actually saw a video where Japan has actually introduced almost a competition or some sort of a design idea for restrooms. And they had, these are architects like Tadao Ando and others were enlisted to provide a concept to further that, because they thought, why should public restrooms be, you know, just a bad experience, for a better lack of term. And some of those concepts were really cool if you look at it. So, you know, people are, even the simplest things in life needs to be thought be thoughtful. Sorry, Audrey, if I jumped in front of you.
No, it's okay. I mean, everything that everyone's saying, makes a lot of sense. I think what I'm hearing is that we need to stay humble, to listen to a lot of different opinions and ideas, and actually to be critical of even work we've already done in the past to see what worked and what didn't. I think we can learn a lot from our own mistakes or oversights. And then also being vigilant to like say, if you think there's a question that you want to raise about a design, not to hesitate about it, because it could be that you're the only one seeing something that could be really impactful for a user and nobody else in the room is thinking of it. But just because no one else is thinking of it doesn't mean that it's not valid and important. So I think those are ways that you can increase the inclusivity of your designs.
And to what you just said, Audrey, I learned it a long time, years ago, where somebody taught me this, and having good mentors helps, is they said, what's the worst that can happen? If you express an idea, it may not fit it, but then have the conversation with whoever says why, understand why it doesn't work. And, oh, I see why it doesn't work for this project, or why it doesn't make sense for the stakeholders that are involved, or it doesn't address the security, whatever those are. But hey, you never know, you get an Instagrammable moment on a building, so
Yeah.
doesn't hurt.
And I think too, like understanding that there are times where you are going to have to make tough trade-offs. Like you can't please everybody, or sometimes you do have to answer to whoever's paying for the project. And so, taking the wins where you can in the project, no matter how big or small, to get your ideas in there or your values in there, I think that's really important.
I would also add that I agree with all of these are great questions and answers. I would say that if you have an idea and if you don't talk about it, you'll never know if it's going to work or not. So it's good to go through that process and understand what are the problems that come up in real life. So it's good to go through that process, understand, and then that can help you in future for other ideas. It's a good process for your own self, for your own growth as well.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it in the design process, to like learn about the challenges and how it benefits us as students and as designers as well. So now we'll be moving on to the individual questions. And our first one is going to be starting off with Stephanie. And our question is, how was your move up process and experience being at Dahlin for almost 18 years?
It sounds so long. I feel old now. I will say that I guess backing up a bit, I didn't go to school to become an architect originally. It was nowhere on my map. I actually went into undergrad as pre-med, graduated pre-law, and kind of fell into architecture. Actually was nudged by a good friend of mine into architecture, and then realized I absolutely loved it. In my 18 years at Dahlin, so I started as an intern at Dahlin, finished up, and then actually came back to Dahlin. And I will say the most important thing that I found is having a good mentor. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what kind of architecture that firm is doing. You could be doing high rises, you could be doing single family homes. It really doesn't matter. What matters more is that you have a mentor that wants to take you on and provide you the guidance and teach you, which is what I got coming to Dahlin. I have, in my 18 years, I've never been told, no, you can't do something. It's always been a question of, okay, what do you want to do? How can we help you get there? What's the goal? Let's flesh it out. Let's understand what exactly you're trying to get to, and then let me help you get there, right? It's providing the pathways. And so for me, stepping into the leadership role, I find that so important now, because remembering that I had no idea what I was doing as I started. All I knew is I was given tasks and I was doing my tasks, right? I wasn't able to see the road ahead of me, really. It was simply kind of that one foot in front of the other, right? I had aspirations, I had I knew I wanted to get licensed, but beyond that, in terms of career, you really don't know as you're coming out of school. You don't know where it's going to lead. You don't know what your strengths are going to be. You don't know what your weaknesses are at that point, and you don't know where you want to push. And as you go through your career, then you start realizing, hey, I'm really good at A and I maybe not so great at B. So what can I do to make myself better at B, but like still push on my strengths and leverage them so I could be better at what I like doing? And then creating your own path. So at Dahlin, luckily, the way we function is, yeah, there's an outline of how you can get from step A all the way to being a principal and all the little milestones in between. But it's also just a guideline, to be honest. It's, hey, this is a path that some people take. This is a guideline of how to get there. But your path could be up, round, and all around and end up somewhere just a little bit different. But that, for me, suits what I know my strengths are. So I may not be as technically experienced as some of the other principals, but my strength lies somewhere else. And that's why we have people with all sorts of different strengths to collaborate and come together. But in any firm that you choose, and I was lucky to kind of get it right on the first shot, to say the least. So but in any firm that you guys choose or you're looking at or you're choosing to intern with, look at the people. Don't look at the people all the way at the top. I mean, it's great to look at who's leading the firm because that's important, but who you guys really want to talk to as you're coming out of school and going through your choices is understanding who the mentors are in that firm, who you get to learn from, understand that you want to work with them, and talk with the staff that's there, right? So when you go in for your interview, ask to talk with the folks that have been there for 2 or 3 years, because that's going to be like more closely relatable to what your experience is going to be for the next 2 or 3 years. If for some reason they're unhappy, that's telling you something about the mentorship that they've gotten over the last 2 or 3 years. So I would say look for that more than looking at the fancy glossy pictures that are up on the website. You're going to also look for a firm, and I appreciate this with Dahlin, is that we don't have silos of work. So we've never been you are only a designer, you only do CDs in production, you only do CA. Everyone that comes through, you put on a project and you get to see it all the way through. And that is so important for growth. Understanding, at the end of the day, when you go out on site, ooh, that detail was fantastic, I'm totally going to do that again. Or, oh, that is not what I thought it was going to be. We're taking that out of our repertoire. But until you're out there, you don't really understand it. So find a place that's going to mentor you and give you the experiences all the way through so you can be a well-rounded architect yourself. That was a really long answer. Sorry.
No, thank you, Stephanie. Our next question is for Audrey. I did have a chance to look into your podcast a little bit. So Ashley shared with Aaliyah and I that you won a fellowship with AWA plus D and started the podcast. And please correct me if I pronounce it wrong, but XXLA Architects. So I'm curious, what inspired you to start the podcast, and what have you learned from speaking with so many different people, different backgrounds in the design field?
Yeah, so one of the great things about AWA plus D and its sister organization, AWAF, is that they fund a lot of scholarships and mid-career fellowship opportunities for women in architecture and design related fields. So when I applied for the fellowship, I was really contemplating what my next step was going to be with my career. I felt like I could be in a really pivotal point where I didn't know if I wanted to continue with my own firm, if I wanted to maybe rejoin a big firm, if I wanted to grow my firm, if I wanted to have a family. And so all of those things, I was looking around and just seeing a lot of amazing women in LA and really wondering what their stories were and what their paths were, because I didn't get a lot of the mentorship from women. So I just didn't have those opportunities that I wanted for myself. So that's where the podcast was came about in my mind. It was almost selfish in a way, but I figured if I was feeling these having all these questions, that maybe it would be useful for other people too. So yeah, it was really an exploration into what the various pathways are in architecture and how women navigated into these roles of leadership, and exploring even what leadership is, because I think there's often a sort of picture of a leader that's of one type of personality, and that actually isn't very productive. And so looking at the various types of leadership styles, I really, through all of those interviews, and getting to know a lot of different women, I just felt like our profession was a lot broader than I previously knew, and that there were so many different examples of leadership that I started to feel a lot more confident knowing that all these people I looked up to were really relatable, and I saw a lot of myself in them as well. So yeah, that was kind of what started it. It's I'm not doing it anymore because I just don't have the time to produce anymore, but you can still listen to it. It's the XXLA Architects podcast, and I'll put a little link in the chat so you can check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. On to our next question for Janvi. As the current vice president and potential future president of AWA plus D, are there any specific initiatives you are working on? Ashley had shared with you that considering creating student chapters, how do you envision it to help young women pursuing a career in architecture?
So to something that Audrey just said, that's kind of the inspiration a little bit of finding myself sometimes. And I didn't go to school here, so I always felt a little disconnected when I moved to this country and trying to find people around me to connect, to talk about architecture, the challenges you face and all of this. But fortunately, over time, I worked with a great group of people that allowed that extension. And every time my company got bought out, my world got bigger and bigger. And I kept meeting these wonderful people along the way who've been great mentors over the time. And that's kind of the hope and vision with these chapters, is providing that support. AWA plus D, has been one of the key places where I found some great women. When I moved to LA, I felt a little bit out of place. All of a sudden, I felt like this big sea of people I don't know. How do I fit into this world? And I remember meeting Audrey at a symposium. It was the first symposium where Audrey presented her fellowship work, and listening to that and going home and listening to the podcast and listening to a few of it kind of started giving me this connection to the community. And today I have a community that I've built in LA with friends, mentors, networks. So to create that sense of pipeline with the student chapters, giving the young women and students today, you guys live in a very, very fast-paced moving, much faster than I feel like I was. And you guys do amazing with the technology, that the way it moves, and allowing you to find those mentors and asking those questions, creating these opportunities. Part of it is also leadership, doing student chapters and creating that board for the student chapters so that you guys can have the opportunity to become leaders. And as you come into the professional world, you've already had a little taste of what leadership looks like, and kind of moving towards those goals faster in a way. Versus I have a mentor who was telling me at one point that I wasn't 25 till 25 years in my career till I became a principal. And, you've accomplished that in a much shorter time, but I was lucky enough to have those mentors, to Stephanie's point of view, who took me under their wing and taught me everything. And every time I turned around and said, oh, I want to try that. Oh, I want to try that. And they supported that instead of, so my career path has never been linear. It was always going up, down, you know. I've been a BIM manager, I've been a visualizer, I've been, you know, being the technology guru, and all these. At some point in my life, I felt my career is going in a different pace, and then it came back. No, I still love design, you know. So it's every day learning something new, and creating these student chapters is a way for us to provide the students an opportunity to meet some of these amazing professional women and in our profession, connect with them, learn from them, and provide this opportunity in a way. So that's the goal with these student chapters, and the hope is that we will have our first student chapter this year. So I'm looking forward to that work, and AWA plus D has been very supportive as usual with an idea that has been brewing in my mind for the past 5 to 6 years of saying, we should have student chapters because you are the future, you are the next generation. We need the next president for AWA plus D, and that why not, that comes from the next, you know, preparing you guys for that position in a way is the goal with it.
Thank you. And our last question for Ronnie. We understand that you had the opportunity to do a lot of traveling. What country impacted you the most as an architect and designer? And what country would you say is a must visit for an architecture student?
Wow. That is, well, the entire world is beautiful. I would say that. But yes, I had the opportunity to travel, and for some reason, wherever I go, my family is forced to just look at architecture and art. So I think, well, of course, you have to visit all the important buildings. You cannot just not see Paris, and you cannot just, you have to go and see all the cities and even look at the old architecture. But I think one needs to visit where the modern and the old exist together. So countries in Asia or Africa, which are still not that developed, and understanding their problems, like what are they facing and what is going on with what was there and what has changed and how people are changing and what are they doing. It's interesting to see those old cultures and how they exist. So Spain is my favorite country to visit. Um, there's a lot that I like about Spain because it has good old architecture as well as new architecture, but there is art very well ingrained in the work, which I don't find anywhere else. And yeah, I would say that also, I think as architects, I think it's not about just visiting and learning from these countries. It's about who you are going to design for. So if you are in this culture, you need to understand this culture. So it's traveling is good, but it's not something that you have to bring back and say, I want to just exactly design what that was like. You cannot do that because the users are different. So you have to, and the culture is different. So you have to respect that, and you have to design according to who you're serving and which culture you're in. You cannot just uh, uh, and there is so much social, economic, and political climate that affects architecture. So certain medieval cities or certain post the World War cities were designed certain way because those things happened there. That doesn't mean that that is the solution to our problems here. So it's interesting to just go and see how those countries are, but it doesn't mean that that's what is going to solve our problems. And in Los Angeles, I think it would be nice to have pedestrian-friendly streets or somewhere where you can just ride. I'm sorry, I'm jumping onto a different thing, but when I went to Copenhagen, I'll tell you, I love biking. And that city is so beautiful and so friendly with bikes. You can see parents going to work, dropping off their kids on bikes. I mean, I think just today I was driving in LA and I was fed up with my car, just sitting in the car. So no exercise, nothing, no fresh air, and you're stuck in traffic and you're adding pollution, right? So that is something I really bring back. So I wish we had a more pedestrian, bike-friendly city instead of just a car city. And that is very important. I would say that that would be a good addition to our city, Los Angeles, or US in general.
Ronnie,
I hope I brought something good.
I have to agree. I'm not sure if you were studying abroad in Copenhagen, but I studied abroad there last year as part of our program. So I was in Copenhagen all of last year, and yes, I miss being able to walk everywhere, take public transportation, bike. Yeah, and I also had the opportunity to travel through Europe. So thank you for all of those thoughts.
Yeah, public transportation as well. That's why I love Europe, because you can see so much. You can just come across so many people while you're traveling in the systems, in the public transportation. And that really matters as people. We need to see each other. We cannot just be in our cars. So that is something I learned when I travel, that we as a country, we don't have this social opportunities, and that's not good for us. So as architects, we have to really push for it. If that is something we can bring change, we should push for that, make it more accessible to everyone and every mode of transportation. So everybody is free to go wherever they want.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for your insight. So right now we're going to end our individual questions and open it up to Q&A. So if anyone wants to ask our panelists any questions, feel free to send them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away.
I can start with a question. We're waiting for some people. This is addressed to, so some of you I know have started your own practice or have been involved with leadership. What challenges have you faced starting that practice or business as a female architect?
I don't know that the starting part for me anyway was the hard part. I sort of fell into having my own business partially by accident, or not intentionally. I think at the time when I had my first project and when I was leaving my other office, I thought I would have done it more intentionally. But there are other realities of like a recession, and you're looking at probably being laid off from a job and thinking, okay, well, I'm getting this, like I'm able to moonlight, so maybe I should just start doing those projects on my own and like see where that goes and how can I support that so that that becomes my full-time income. So I think just being flexible was really important, and like trying to figure out, okay, well, I can teach and do this at the same time, and that becomes a full-time income while I grow my business. Or you know, trying to figure out how do I learn new things while I'm on my own. So building a network of other women who are, or people who are practicing and saying, hey, how did you detail this? Or like, have you ever worked with somebody who fabricates this? Do you have leads for me? And so like building up your network like that, in multiple ways to kind of support you as you're doing something on your own is, I think, really important. And then also just being open to not being able to control everything in your life and in your path. Like I think from the podcast, like people tell you a story about their life that seems like it makes a lot of sense and is very intentional, but that's not the truth. And I don't know how many times I would even do an interview and then I would get the real story afterwards. And it's like, wait, you should be sharing this. Like, people need to hear the background of like, oh yeah, I was going to get laid off, so that's why I left. Or, you know, this thing happened at that firm and that's why I left. And so, yeah, anyway, I think that there's like a myth of what, you know, you craft your life to be, and to some extent you can do that, but also being able to shift and move and like see an opportunity and then jump on it, I think is really important.
I can go. I agree. Yeah, seizing the opportunity. So I have worked in offices for others, and I realized I was not given a lot of freedom to do things. And unfortunately, I did not have mentors like Stephanie and Janvi who can support you and kind of understand what you really want. And I really wanted to do more leadership roles, which unfortunately I was not getting. So I was hitting a wall, and then just life takes a turn. I moved. I was in Connecticut, and then I had 2 kids, and then I moved here, and I couldn't go and work in downtown for large firms, which was good in a way. So it was a good time to buy a house. So we just bought an old house, which is almost torn apart, and we lived in that house. And as every architect's dream, I wanted to build my own house, and I didn't know whether I'll be able to do it. So it just started there, and I seized the opportunity. I'm going to build it as well, because I did not have the money to hire a contractor. So you have to sometimes suffer, and you have to also seize those opportunities. So we suffered for 3 years with 2 kids in an almost broken house, and then it got built, and that's just started. So that was an accidental start of my own practice, which brought me more work. And today, when I look back, I think that's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to do something on my own, because I was not fully satisfied working for other people. And I always wanted to just not work on drawings. I also wanted to be in the field. That is something that also kind of carved my career to where I am today. That's what I would say. So sometimes you have to trust yourself, take this opportunity, and you just go for it and reach out to people. You have so many people now, women in particular. That's what men do. We think men know everything, but no, they also reach out to each other. And that's what I learned working with my subcontractors, that they have their own network. So we have our own network. And I'm glad Janvi's starting these sub-chapters, which will give others access to more women, and that definitely will help you in your careers and find your path, find what makes you happy. Yeah.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions in the chat. First off, what typologies do each of you practice in or enjoy the most, and how do you decide which direction to take architecture to? Sorry, which direction in architecture to take? And then the second question, addressed to Ronnie and everyone, you touched upon the need to promote and encourage public transportation in the US. In the same vein, environmental standards in architectural construction are much stricter in Europe. How can we inform our US clients and encourage them to prioritize environmentally sustainable construction and design? So we are running out of time, but I just thought really quickly if you guys had any thoughts about those questions before we wrap it up.
I guess I'll take the first question if my co-panelists are supportive of it. I think the key thing is to try everything. I think everybody on this panel probably would agree till you find the one that your heart sings with. Try every project type, take every opportunity you get. Don't shy away from it. It's not going to be an answer where you will find in a book. It's going to come through your experiences, whether you resonate with being more on the creative design side, whether you are more technical and being out in the field and solving problems on the field, or different project types. Like in my career, I've gone from essential services, civic buildings to education, where my passion is. It took me 10 years to say, no, I want to spend most of my time doing education and public projects. And I don't necessarily, I've done a couple private places, and it's not something where I'll do it. If somebody comes and says, hey, you want to try high rise? I will definitely try it. But at the same time, I also know I enjoy public projects. So, but it took about 10 to 12 years for me to figure that out. It wasn't something that you could find an answer in a book. It comes through experiences, and try every opportunity you get. Look for different firms that can offer you variety in your work. To Stephanie and like Ronnie said, it's people who can give you different project types, try different things. Don't try to put yourself, and sometimes you do it at a small firm, look at a different firm. Your career is not always going to be linear, and being flexible, to what Audrey said, be agile about it, and you will get the best experiences possible. So hopefully, I think I touched all of the ideas that we've been talking about, but if I missed something, please feel free to add.
310%. I mean, things never end up the way they plan. I went to school and did all of the housing courses because I thought I was going to do housing. I was very convinced that that's what I wanted to do. I've been out and I have done a shed in someone's backyard. That's as close to housing as I've gotten in what I've done. But of every, I've done all sorts of different types and types of architecture outside of housing. And here in China, I've gotten to touch hotels, all sorts of different things. I think the ones that tug on my heartstrings the most are the community facilities, and specifically ones for underserved and underrepresented communities, because they need it the most. They appreciate it the most. It's not the biggest, most expensive facility I've done, but it's the one that means the most to the community. And you can see at the end of the day how much they treasure it, and they just need the resources that it provides.
I can go. I would say that I think that somebody asked about public transportation. How can we have US kind of take a stab at it? So I would say that that's all into policy making, and we need people, like-minded people, making those decisions at those places. So it's not completely up to us. So it is interesting to talk more about it so that there is more conversations happening around the board. And if you really want to do something about it, you have to go and talk to the mayor or whoever is making this decision. So if you want something done, then you have to find where these decisions are actually made and talk more about it. That's one way of bringing change. And I would say for women, I think the most key part that I have learned is understanding your own finances, understanding how a project, why does it cost so much? So when you know what the cost is, why it is so expensive, then you know how to design. Then you kind of realize, you get the total grasp of the whole thing, like, oh, this costs so much, and I'm just thinking about these wild ideas. Let me just put a stop and not waste my time and just, so understanding how the whole project works is very important. You cannot just be isolated, sitting in one corner and just designing and making drawings. No, I would say that it would be good for women to know the cost breakdown, even of your office. how are things being, who's being paid what and what's going on. It's good to learn all those things. And it's important to learn finances. That's what I would say, a takeaway for women.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of said a lot of great information about to answer these questions. Yeah, I think especially when you are new in your career, to try different things and find experiences that are going to be meaningful to you. For me, I've found that, I came out of architecture school really ambitious about design. And what I found was that my happiness was so much more pronounced when I was working with people who I liked. So the people ended up mattering more than the building, in my experience. But that may not be true for you. But I think getting all of those different experiences will show you what matters to you and where you can find that. So if it's a fast timeline on a project that's going to keep you more engaged, or if it's, more of a public project where you're going to have more interaction with all of the constituents, figuring out what that is does take time. And I don't think there's any one right answer. I think that you could be successful in doing commercial projects. You could be successful in, school projects, hospitality, single family residential. It's just figuring out how your personality is going to fit within that project type, and whether it's something that's going to make you happy in the whole picture of your life.
I'll share a funny, I find it funny in a way, but it's kind of an anecdote to what Audrey said. You as an individual know your personality. I always laugh to my co-workers who do private high rise private development buildings, and they will say, you want to come try and work, and I'm like, you don't want me in there, because my mind's going to go, how am I going to make this efficient, cost effective? I will not specify a marble lobby, which is what you're trying to create, an experience of elegance and luxury in this scenario. Whereas I work on public projects and my mind's going to go, wait, that's a dollar value that I can save and do something different with that money, or create that extra space that I want to give to the constituents of that public project. So it's your own personality of wanting to do different things, and there's no right or wrong answer about it, because you might be somebody who loves and has a great taste for creating a luxurious experience for, otherwise we would not have the fancy resorts if we didn't have designers and architects who could think like that. So it's definitely, to what Audrey said, it's kind of who you are, and you will get drawn to those kind of projects as you experience them and try them.
Thank you so much. Before we end off, I'd like to ask everyone to turn on their cameras if they're able to, so we can take a quick screenshot of everyone that joined in to the meeting. All right, I'll do a little countdown. Yeah, 3, 2.
Wait,
Oh,
Arlene,
you can go ahead.
let me unpin you guys so we can get. Okay, go ahead.
All right, I'll do a quick countdown again. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you all so much for joining in with us, and to our 4 amazing panelists, Stephanie, Audrey, Janvi, and Ronnie, for being out tonight, and we appreciate your time. Thank you to AWA plus D for hosting this event in collaboration with CPP NOMAS, and thank you to everyone who stayed and participated. There are always on-campus resources at the Women's Student Center for any questions and assistance. I'll drop a link in the chat if anyone's interested. And we hope this was a really insightful event for everyone. And thank you all for coming and have a good night.
Everyone, have a nice night.